بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، بارئ الخلائق أجمعين، باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المنتجبين، واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. We offer thanks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all the blessings, and we convey our salutation and greeting to the Holy Prophet of Islam and his pure progenies. قال الله العظيم في محكم كتابه: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم، بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الله الذي خلقكم من ضعف ثم جعل من بعد ضعف قوة ثم جعل من بعد قوة ضعفا وشيبة يخلق ما يشاء وهو العليم القدير. Allah is the one who created you in a state of weakness, then created strength after weakness, then created weakness after strength. He creates whatever He wills, and He is all-knowing, all-powerful. I began last night with using this verse as a point to begin the conversation about what is perceived to be a crisis of youth within our community. Could I ask the sisters in the back, please, to refrain from telling stories for the next 45 minutes until we finish the program. I indicated that this specific verse, ayah or verse number 54, outlines the three major phases in human life. Early, which is associated with weakness, then middle, which is associated with power and youth, then gradually, as one's longevity increases, the point of descent starts and ultimately reaches point of weakness. The three major phases, we don't have time to go through all of them, but at least we want to focus on the middle section, the issue of youth. I pointed out last night that if we look around, whether in the education section, the psychologist, those who are associated with family well-being, even the schools, they clearly indicate that there are some challenges that we have to deal with. The issue or the challenge that youth presents has occupied the mind of scholars, and the number of conferences, papers, articles, symposium, and even classes, various classes at different schools clearly indicate that this challenge must be addressed. The problem that we are dealing with when it comes to the youth is that instead of spending some time assessing this and establishing whether there is such an issue which is called crisis, we tend to repeat the phrase that yes, it is a crisis. And we somehow, depending on our lens and perspective, come up with a solution or a prescription, or see the challenge or the tension through these lenses. Last night I indicated that if, say, the parents or people who are looking at things and assessing it come out from the religious perspective, they normally focus on the fact that, well, the youth these days, they don't have the same tendency. I think we have to have signs around the center in multiple languages: Farsi, Arabic, French, English, Hispanic, Chinese, Dutch, and so on, and hope that some people understand one of these languages, and then that will at least convince them or encourage them that if they should refrain for half an hour, nothing will happen. The lenses that we use to assess and look at things reflect whether we see it as a tension or crisis. If you look at the questions that these conferences focus upon, how do we resolve the youth crisis? The youth are the ones that have caused crisis, etc., etc. And then we say each one looks at this through their own eyes and say, well, the youth certainly don't attend mosque these days, or religious centers, or faith organizations. Then the youth has some kind of religious or faith issue. Those of you who come back from the traditional lens, they say, well, certainly they have no respect for the traditional cultures. Then there is this issue of culture. Those of you who consider themselves more educated tend to say, well, the youth have fundamental challenge of education. For us, if we want to be impartial and look at it from the outside, we certainly see that there are tensions, but there are no crisis or chaos. How do we understand the tension? It depends on how do we assess the situation in which the youth are living in. If we look at the verses in the Holy Quran and the number of traditions that we have, clearly they make reference to at least few occasions to the challenge that exists between certain mindset and the youth. Those of you who are familiar with the story of the flood, Noah and his son, if you look at the verse in the Holy Quran, there was certainly a conflict between Prophet Nuh and one of his children, or at least the son that Quran talks about, in which Nuh says, Ya bunayya irkab ma'ana, O son, come back to this boat, because this is the only source of salvation. The answer is, no, I will walk and get up to the hill or the mountain. That will save me from the flood. That challenge itself is clear. At the same time that the issue of Nuh and his son, the conflict or the tension that exists between the two mindsets, Quran refers to, there are other instances in which Quran refers to the harmony that exists between parents or between father and son. The story of Ibrahim. Ya bunay inni ara fil manam anni adbahuk. O son, I have had a dream that I'm offering you as some kind of, I'm going to slaughter you, or whichever phrase we use. The response from the son now is total and absolute obedience. Ya abat taf'al ma tu'mar. I will submit, you do whatever you have been commanded to. The story of Luqman and his son, again, is another section in the Holy Quran that Luqman offers advice to his son and he listens. Musa, during the early childhood and adolescence, is considered to be an example of the tension that exists between a youth that has a degree of wisdom with the tyrannical structure that exists in his society. He wants to be free and he wants to guide his society as well to be free. So, or the story of Yaqub and Yusuf and his brothers. These are various stories in the Holy Quran. If we define or divide the two views that exist vis-a-vis the youth, one claiming to be a chaotic world that the youth enter into and they are the main challenge, and the other one says no chaos, they are not the challenge, there is a tension in their life. Quran and our ahadith seem to be on the side of tension rather than the chaos. There is a number of ahadith from the Holy Prophet praising the youth within the community. It says, I give you advice, I commend you to respect the youth within the community because they have pure heart. There is another hadith that says, may Allah bless the youth within the community because when I offered my message as a messenger, the older generation rejected but the youth accepted. Or there is another hadith that says the most fruitful period of somebody's life is that unique section or part of his life that we consider to be the adolescence or the youth. A hadith that I narrated last night, Amir al-Mu'mineen says that one of the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all human beings is this notion of a period of adolescence and being youth. We really don't understand the value of it until we lose it. Once we have lost it, then we understand why that unique section, unique period or phase of one's life was so critical, and unfortunately we did not use it to the best of our ability. Those people who claim that certainly there is a tension, there is no crisis, they say this tension is purely as a consequence of what we call external conditions that determine youth life. Challenges in the family, schools, educational environment, society at large, religious centers, etc., etc. The youth are searching for solution to crises, to questions that they are confronted with in their life, and these centers are unable to provide them with the solution. Naturally, it causes a tension. This tension has to be resolved. If it wasn't, Islam says that there is no crisis, it's a tension. Otherwise, why is it Islam says that as soon as a child reaches the age of puberty and say adolescence, he or she becomes mukallaf, which means now religious obligations come in. If inherently a youth enters a period of instability and crisis, it would be unfair from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to command these individuals, male or female, to suddenly enter into this understanding of their obligation. Islam rejects that notion that inherently there is a crisis. It definitely believes that there is a tension, and this tension is constructed as a consequence of certain conditions outside rather than inherently being in the nature of the youth. One of probably, one could just guess, the reason why we are not prepared or accept that this challenge and tension is due or a consequence of the external factors is because we are not prepared to accept that we are implicated in the crisis that has been developed in our community vis-a-vis the youth. Quran, Hadith clearly states when it comes to the children's development or upbringing, defines or divides the first 21 years into 3 different 7-year phases. First phase, the second phase, and the third phase. The adolescence, or what sociologists might call the period of tension, starts from beginning of the third phase, literally, from around the end of 13, beginning of 14, and sometimes late development from 15 onwards. We are not prepared to accept that the way of life that we have chosen for ourselves, we have ignored the first 7 years for the children's development. We have totally left the second 7 years as well. And finally, when we get to the third 7 years, what do? We throw in the towel and then we start crying that, well, there is nothing we can do. It's unique mindset that nobody can resolve. We tend to forget that the period before the adolescence, the period before bulugh, supposed to be used as a stepping stone towards ultimately reaching that adolescence and the period of tension. Otherwise, if we ignore it, the expectation that suddenly from tomorrow the child is going to be an ideal model of what Islam expects the child to be, it's irrational. Those of you who are familiar with ahadith about children's upbringing, not only it focuses on the concept of bulugh, which is beginning of adolescence, there is another concept that Islam brings into this period. Islam says, when a child becomes mumayyiz, which moves out, literally, it's moving out of the first 7 years and moving into the second 7 years. The mind is not still reached the age in which complete blossoming and bulugh, but at least there is a degree of understanding of things. During the period of tamyiz, there is mustahab, although there is no obligation for a child to follow religious instruction, but there is istihbab and recommendation for them to pray, for them to fast, for them to participate in religious activities as again, a period of preparing them for ultimate transformation that would take place moving into the adolescence. How many of us pay attention to those periods? This goes to the point that I raised a couple of nights ago, that one of the critical issues is the role of the family. Yes, there are a number of institutions that have the responsibility to develop, and they all have shared responsibility if there is a failure or there is a tension. But family as the first structure in which the parents become the role model should respond and should accept sole responsibility when there is a tension. So not only Islam says that there is an obligation during the period of the early puberty, there is even a istihbab and recommendation before it. How many of us would organize prayers inside the house? Jama'ah prayers. Although there is an expression that says a family that prays together stays together. How many of us as parents have a plan, a particular corner inside the house? We organize the biggest flat screen in our house that distracts the child's time from even educational activities, but there is no clear corner that reminds the child that in this corner we get together as a family and we offer our prayers. A child is left aloof. Nobody does anything about the religious obligations, food and anything else. Under the excuse or the banner is, well, there is no taklif, let them do whatever they want. And then once this happens, suddenly a transformation takes place. The expectation that as if tomorrow, after 14 years of play, as if tomorrow you have a responsibility to fulfill your duty. But while as parents and as a family or as a society, a religious establishment, educational establishment, we have failed to prepare the child for this occasion. Just imagine a metaphor. You are blind, kept blind with a piece of cloth on your eyes in a dark room, not being informed of what's going to happen outside. Then your parent get hold of your hand and bring you out of a dark room, suddenly into bright sunshine, remove the cover over your eyes and say, now you have to behave in a particular manner. Our children are ill-equipped, unprepared, ill-informed, and then we expect miracle from them. Naturally, it leads to tension. Not only issues to do with politics, right and wrong, justice and injustice, basic ideas of our community, we do not teach our children. The only thing that they see from us as parents, you wake up in the morning, you eat breakfast, if you are lucky to have your parents around. Otherwise, bowl of cereal in your hand and you walk to school. Or one of these energy bars and you walk to school. In the bus. And then you come back home to an empty house. Your parents might come in at 6, 7, 8 o'clock exhausted. They don't have time, what they call, psychologists would call qualitative time, to spend with the children. You're going to go to sleep, and then what? Occasionally, if you are lucky, they might bring you into Islamic centers, religious centers, faith centers, or anywhere else. But at the age of 15, they expect you to go through this holy transformation. The expectation far exceeds what even the role models are prepared to adhere to. So how are we going to resolve this tension for the youth? They say, Marhum Mutari has a section that in one of his books that I will read the Farsi and then I'll translate it. He said, مهمتر از این که طرحی برای رهبری این نسل تهیه کنیم این است که این فکر در ما قوت بگیرد که مسئله رهبری و هدایت از لحاظ تاکتیک و کیفیت عمل در زمانهای متفاوت و در مورد اشخاص متفاوت فرق می‌کند. و ما باید این خیال را از کله خود بیرون کنیم که نسل جدید را با همون متد قدیمی میتونیم تربیت کنیم. اول بایستی نسل جوان را بشناسیم و بفهمیم دارای چه مشخصاتی و ممیزاتی است، بعد به فکر حل مشکلات و پیدا کردن راه. What he says for those, he says, before we even talk about solution, before we even think about resolution of tension, the first step is to understand the youth, to understand their psychology, to understand their positive and negative characteristics, and to what we call dispense with the idea that the old methodology used for our upbringing is going to succeed for their upbringing, while their time and space is completely different. So when the brother asked me a few nights ago, how do we develop, either articulate a language or develop a methodology in which fundamental principles, either within our shura or anything else, the tragic component and the non-tragic component, could be translated and explained to the youth, we really need to start from ground zero. Do we really understand our youth? Those who intend to take this responsibility seriously must possess a number of conditions. First, they themselves must become the embodiment of everything that they ask the youth to fulfill. If there is a contradiction between what we preach and what we ask the youth or what we act, then they are going to pick it up. Son, don't lie. It's forbidden. and the first he or she comes home, between husbands and wife, parents, they have it. Picks up the phone. So it's somebody that you don't want to hear or to talk to. Tell him he's not here. You may think it's a joke. But in the mindset of a child that records all these events, there is this dichotomy between action and preaching. Be straightforward, tell me the truth. But they see the parents not telling truth to each other. So number one, those who search for resolution of conflict and coming up with some kind of a unique way of trying to explain to the youth, they have the responsibility to equip themselves and to literally transform their own life into a life where they become the role model. Amir al-Mu'mineen in Nahj al-Balagha says, I never asked you to do anything good, well, I was the first one who did it. I never asked you to refrain from anything bad, and I was the one who stood and walked away from it first. So that's number one. We become the embodiment of all the values that we want to ask our children to practice in their lives. Number two, we have no alternative. We have to create space for our children, for our youth, to ask questions. The comment made last night by Mahmoud Qari says, don't assume that all these questions are malicious in nature. No. Some of them most of them come out of their inquisitive nature. They want to find out. They have asked questions and you have failed to deliver the answer. Let them ask questions. Prepare yourself to answer. While at the same time, you need to inform them that if you, as parent, have a responsibility towards guiding them, but with love, compassion, and affection. Last night, I didn't refer to the incident of Karbala because, as I said mentioned it, that this first night was an introduction to the conversation that we're going to have about the youth. Any attempt to search a solution to the tension that the youth have must start with the step of understanding the youth. And again, to repeat what Marhum Tahari said, we have to dispense with the idea that the old methodology that worked once, in our case, in a different time and space, 60 years ago, 80 years ago, 40 years ago, is going to work beginning of the 21st century in the United States, in the most cosmopolitan society on earth. We have no other alternative but to spend time and come up with a new methodology. If we are serious about the future of our children, if their spirituality matters, if their akhlaq matters, if their aqaid and belief matters. Otherwise, if like everybody else, the physical well-being is the only thing that concerns us, well, provide them with a ceiling over their head and give them a little bit of food, find them to school, and that's it. Leave it, they will progress. If we are looking, when during the month of Ashura, almost the last few nights, if we are looking for the youth, similar to the youth of early Islam, that they stood up for justice. I just recited the hadith from the Holy Prophet. Says, may God bless the youth. When the older generation refused to accept my message, they were the one who came forward and accepted and defended me. Why? Because their heart are pure. Their spirit is clean and sure. Sin has not tarnished their inner being, their soul, etc. These are the same youth. They have the same capacity. Educational upbringing or youth upbringing means nothing more than transforming the potentialities that exist inside the youth into outside practical issues. Why do we fail? This is, as they say, the $64 million question. that every family, every father, every mother has to go back home and seriously think. Story of Ashura is a unique occasion. The verse in the Holy Quran talks about the three major phases: weakness, strength, and again weakness. Early age, middle age, and late age. The story of Ashura has the entire continuum in it. From 6-month-old until 80 or 90 some years old. Can we imagine? I don't believe it was just purely the nature being different. I believe when we read the story of those who participated at the young age, 8, 9, 10, 11 in the Battle of Karbala, and they came forward to Imam and recited certain things that reflects on how sharp and how open-minded they are, how enriched they were by the Spirit, as well as knew what was going on as far as haqq and batil. It really makes me speechless as to why is it that our youth are so behind. Let's leave the story of Abdullah al-Rabi', the 6-month, 4-month, 5-month-old baby aside. We have Qasim ibn al-Hasan, the son of Imam Hassan, about 13, 14 years old. I know there are stories about his marriage, etc. Let's, for the time being, leave that out. Stands in front of his uncle when Imam says, look, you are the only thing left that reminds me of my brother. What he tells Imam Hussein, let's dispense with sentimentality. This is a critical issue of haqq and batil, and I cannot miss the opportunity. Goes and gets a letter from his mother, a wasiyah from his father, that at this critical time, don't let your uncle alone. Similar kind of, the sons of Zainab, they're all about 11, 12, 13. The same thing. How can we leave you in this critical time? The sons of Muslim ibn Aqil, the same thing. What makes them so unique? It's the environmental factors more than anything else. Yes, the agreement of the parents, but the environmental factors. You bring up the child, you plan for it from the beginning. When you feed the child, you tell them about haqq and batil. There is no phase in their life that they are left alone with no education. And the rest of the youth, they all say the same thing. There is Umar ibn Janada al-Ansari. His father had just a few minutes before him got martyred. He's 13 years old. Comes to Imam. Imam says to the others who are around, few individuals that were left, brothers, his father just got martyred. His mother has nobody else. How can I let him go and get killed? Take him to his mother. Look at the speech that he delivers over there. My mother sent me and told me this is the golden opportunity to see Fatima al-Zahra. 11 years old. How can you deny me this opportunity? What can you say? We've seen women, mothers, we've seen fathers, we've seen brothers encouraging each other to go forward. If we want our children to imitate and follow the path, we really need to rethink the whole structure regarding the youth within our life. It's not just articulation of the language on how to transfer. The whole thing has to be transformed. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive our sin, and inshallah, still there is opportunity. But one day you may realize that this is a critical issue that we really need to pay attention. Ashura not only has values, universal values, also has within it this a unique continuum of age that can become the role model, the example for anyone that fits within that phase.